All right, we're rolling in here for another episode of Israel Unfiltered. Today, I got a really great guest with me. I got Hillel Fuld. Hillel Fuld is a good friend of mine that actually got me into social media many years ago. He first introduced me to Twitter in 2009. For those that don't know Hillel Fuld is probably, I would say, a social media influencer that really understands some of my favorite things: technology, marketing, Zionism, Israel, venture capital, all the things that I do, my bread and butter, and media. And so that's why if there's a brother that I definitely want to speak to and for you guys to be exposed to, it would be Hillel. So Hillel, thank you for joining us.
I got you into social media?
Into Twitter, more accurately. I mean, I was on Facebook before then, but yeah, we met in 2009 when I was at Bar Ilan, and I don't know how we met, and you invited me for coffee in Beit Shemesh, and I don't know who this guy was, and I was like, I don't know, is this guy a pedophile? Even though I was like, I was like, what this guy wants me to do? He wants me to, I don't know.
What just happened?
Like, why does he want me to come to Beit Shemesh for coffee? Who is this? Why is he so like insistent? Yeah, you go come. We'll talk about marketing. You got to get on Twitter. And I was like, who are you? And I don't remember how we got introduced. A couple years ago, I tried to find out how we first got connected. Couldn't find it. And so I got on Twitter and I was active then. Then I wasn't for 10 years. And I got active again like a year ago and actually got Bar Ilan's business school on. And they actually gave me $1,000 scholarship because I was able to attract international students without me asking. I was doing it for free. I volunteered. I wanted to play with it because it was kind of like a business account as opposed to personal, trying to understand how to use it. Just as a hobby, right? I was actually looking to go into finance. And that's kind of was how I got into social media in a sense, not as a regular user, but for using it beyond that was probably your first telling me, dude, you got to get on Twitter.
Very interesting. I did not know that. Okay, cool.
Awesome. So first off, I want to talk a little bit about kind of like the ecosystem in Israel. We should probably talk about something that's a little bit relevant right now is like there's a recession, there's inflation in America, and that's affecting Israel's ecosystem in particular because most of the investments are coming, let's say, from VCs in the States. What would you say right now is going on? How would you explain the economic situation when it comes to Israel's tech scene in general, right? Its strengths and all that, and what we're going to be going through now in particular, and is it any different from what's going on in America?
So yeah, I don't really share in everyone's hysteria, if I'm being honest. You know, obviously layoffs are layoffs and they suck, and I was laid off from my first job. It is not pleasant. But if you look kind of wide picture, in the grand scheme of things, Israel was always extremely conservative when it comes to valuation. So, you know, the same company that's worth, let's say, whatever, $50 million here, if they get on a plane 15 hours to SF, that same company is worth 10 times that. And so over the years, Israeli entrepreneurs were extremely frustrated by that their companies are worth less here. In an ironic twist of events, now when the world is suffering and everyone's doing down rounds because they raised at insane valuations that were not in any way justified, you know, by their revenue, everyone else is bleeding. In Israel, you know, yes, again, there are layoffs and it's not great, but I think in the grand scheme of things, we're actually in better shape than most other ecosystems.
And so you're saying that why? Because we didn't have crazy valuation, so it wasn't like a bigger tree that didn't fall. You know, it wasn't as big of a fall for a tree. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. You know, again, like a company that's valuation is at least somewhat tied to its revenue, the way it should be.
Right.
You know, and now that the market's correcting itself, and all of the, you know, the let's call them the hot air startups that really have no justification to be worth billions of dollars, they're kind of disappearing. And the real, you know, legit companies are standing. And so I think generally speaking in Israel, we have less of those. We have less of those multi-billion-dollar companies that have like, you know, $10 million of revenue. And so I think in the grand scheme of things, we're doing a lot better than other ecosystems. Having said that, it is definitely harder to raise capital now. It is definitely, you know, we're seeing down rounds, we're seeing layoffs. It's not pretty, but I do think we're in better shape than most other ecosystems.
Awesome. Great. So if someone wants to understand, how would you explain Israel's tech scene? I was like, oh, here Israel's got a great tech scene. Like, how would you explain it to someone that hears, oh, yeah, they got a lot of tech going on, but they don't really understand. They're not here on the ground. Let's say they're in America. How would you explain it to someone that isn't even so involved in technology? How would you explain it?
I'd explain it that, you know, we're a country smaller than the size of New Jersey in the worst neighborhood on Earth, in the most unstable region on planet Earth. And really, no matter how you want to analyze this ecosystem, there's something remarkable going on here. And I'll give you a few examples. If you look at the capital flowing into Israel, again, put everything I'm about to say into perspective of this is a country smaller than New Jersey in the most unstable region on planet Earth. If you look at how much capital is flowing into Israel, the last I checked the numbers in 2020, there was, I think, if I'm not mistaken, $11 billion invested in Israeli startups in 2020. In 2021, from 11 billion, we jumped to 26 billion. I mean, that's just an insane number. And so the capital's flowing in, because this is where it's all going on. So that's in terms of quantity. But you look at the quality of that capital, it's even more interesting because you're going to have a really hard time finding any tier one VC in the United States that has not set up shop in Israel. Now, I'm talking about the big guys, the Lightspeeds, the Excels, the Insights, all of them, they're all here. And even the ones that are not here, even the Andreessen Horowitzes of the world that have one office in Silicon Valley, they have a man on the ground scouting out deals for them. And Mark Andreessen personally told me that when they open their second office, it's going to be in Tel Aviv, which is just crazy. So the capital.
I'm a huge fan of Mark Andreessen. I think he's fantastic. He's great.
I think he's a legend, right? And so the quantity of that capital, the quality of that capital is just unparalleled. So that's in terms of capital. And then you look at the success stories. You look at unicorns, right? $1 billion companies. And so again, numbers. Last I saw, the entire EU, the entire European Union has about 120 unicorns. Israel, about 100. That's insane. That's just insane. And so that's on the private side. On the public side, on Wall Street, the country with the most companies on Wall Street is the United States, which is obviously, 350 million people. Obviously, the United States is where it's all at. And then the second country with the most companies on Wall Street is China, 1.5 billion people. And the third is Israel, 9 million people. That's, again, insane. And then you look at the multinationals, every single top tech multinational, corporation, from Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, every single one of them is not only in Israel, but they're actually building significant parts of their portfolio here in Israel. So, when you unlock your iPhone with Face ID, that's Israeli technology that Apple acquired. When you Google something and it says, "Did you mean this?" That's Apple. That's Israeli technology that's being developed here. Microsoft Ventures started here. Oracle Cloud. They're all here. They're all building massive parts, of their product here in Israel, which is again insane given how small we are. And then you look at the exits, you look at the IPOs, you look at the impact, right? The impact for me is the most exciting. You look at companies, whether it's cancer treatments, whether it's mental health companies or any other, healthcare in general, any company, that's really making the world a better place. Israel is killing it on that front. So really, like I said, no matter how you want to look at this ecosystem, there's something borderline miraculous going on here. And I think it's
so let's talk about that something. All right. So you talked about that we're in the most volatile place in the world, right? The size of Jersey, surrounded by a lot of people that want to murder us. There was a terrorist attack today. It's very tragic. I believe that is the reason of our success. One of the reasons. I think that's a major factor. I think when you have obstacles and challenges, such as Israel has, especially they're existential, if you're able to overcome them, when you're able to learn and pick up on the back end of resiliency, open to failure, you know what I mean? Because Israel's definition of failure could be life and death. Failure in America, is something else, right? Is my post didn't go viral, so it's a whole, I think, different perception. And I think having to use, let's say, technology in the military for defense in particular has enabled us to be able to build this technology and then bring it over years, then lead it into the private sector. So would you agree with me that because we're in such a bad neighborhood, because it's not just a bad neighborhood, an existential threat that Israel seems to always have over our head, that's leading to the technological ongoing revolution? And that because if we were suddenly to have neighbors like Canada, we can find ourselves in a generation that we might lose our technological edge. What are your thoughts?
So first of all, it's a really interesting point. I actually wrote an article many, many, many years ago on Mashable.com about the inverse correlation between innovation in Israel and terrorism. What I mean by that is it's actually, no, I'm sorry, not the inverse. It's actually correlation. You would think there'd be an inverse correlation. You'd think the more terror, the less innovation because we're scared, We're trying to survive, but it's actually the opposite. As you see terror increasing, you see innovation in Israel increasing, which is fascinating. Right. And I think this is actually a principle or a concept that we see in the Bible, in the Old Testament, right? So when the Jews were in Egypt, ancient Egypt, the actual Bible, in the Torah, in the verses itself, not commentary, it says the more the Egyptians oppressed the Jews, the more they reproduced, literally black on white. And so I think this is something, that's interesting in our DNA that, we're always in survivor mode and we just got to keep going. And we can't just sit back and just chill. It doesn't work that way. And so, I always say that, like, if you look at Israeli culture, as you know this, Yoel, one of the biggest, I'd say, no-nos in Israeli culture, like the worst thing you can do is be a friar, right? In other words,
right.
like a sucker.
What's a friar?
Right? Like a sucker.
Right, yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like I'm driving, and in most places in the world, maybe putting aside New York City, in most places in the world, if I want to switch lanes, I put on my blinker, and the driver in the next lane presumably slows down to let me in. In Israel, they speed up. You know why they speed up? I'm telling you the truth. This is going to sound ridiculous to you, but I believe this wholeheartedly. We speed up.
It's true. Yeah.
We speed up because we were massacred in the Holocaust. We speed up because
you think it's that interesting?
We can't let people into our lane. When we let people into our lane, we end up, where we ended up in history. And I want to tell you, there's never been a 75-year period, which is how long the state of Israel exists, that so few Jews have been murdered in the world. Think about that statistic, right?
Right. That's a great point, by the way, right? That's a fantastic point. I never thought of it, right?
There were the pogroms, the Holocaust, the Inquisition. There was always something. And don't get me wrong. Obviously, I don't know if we want to go into this, but you don't have to tell me, what every life that's lost is and how it's a whole world. I know, trust me, I learned it my own, but at the end of the day, we have to take a step back. We have to look at the grand scheme of things. And in the grand scheme of things, this country is defending the Jews, period, full stop. And we cannot let people into our lane. We need to be in survivor mode, and we need to change the world. That's the bottom line.
Lovely. So going forward, what do you think are the main obstacles going forward for Israel? Do you think it's more of the same and just slow growth? Because people were talking about Israel as a startup nation, right? And then the goal was, how do we make it scale up nation? How do we build companies? And we're starting to see that, right? I think it basically took people wanted their first exit. They wanted to make their millions, and then, all right, let me get back in now. Let me do something a little harder. Let me build something, and also more of a greater legacy, not just sell it out. Let's have a team, employees, and let's keep it here and all that. Do you think, is that the direction? Is that Israel is going to continue to make a lot bigger and bigger companies?
Yeah, I think the book Startup Nation was written many, many years ago, and it talks about how Israel became this quote unquote startup nation. Back then, when I would meet with entrepreneurs or VCs, the discussion was always surrounding your exit strategy, right? How are you going to exit this company? How are you going to sell this company? And both VCs and entrepreneurs were indeed looking for short, flips, looking to flip companies. I literally cannot tell you the last time I've ever heard that phrase, exit strategy. No one talks like that.
Interesting.
No one talks like that anymore. And
so what is it now? Is it public strategy? Is it trying to go public?
So Israeli companies are looking to build large sustainable businesses. That could be a private company, that could be a public company, but they're looking to build, and I think, if you look at the tech world in general, I think unicorns are like 2018. Now it's not about billion-dollar companies anymore. Now it's about trillion-dollar companies, right? So I think as an ecosystem, I think our goal is, with all due respect to what we've done, and I mean that without cynicism, I think it's amazing. We have not yet built a Google or a Facebook, and I think that's kind of the next frontier, to build a really world-leading, hopefully trillion-dollar company.
What's stopping us?
Great questions. I think
because I'll say something. I was reading a few years ago. I was reading about Samsung and just the massive impact it has on Korea. Yeah. The technology that pairing with universities, with students, free internships, is just the insane amount of jobs and just what it does for Korea. And now Israel's smaller than Korea, and for us to just have one behemoth here, I think would change everything, right? Why do you think? Do you think that's just a matter of like making bigger and slower? You think it's just like, in 20 years, 10 years, we'll have one of those, or what are you thinking? And then then I got a follow-up question.
So it's interesting, and this is kind of like the other side of the coin, right? Because we don't let people into our lane, and that plays to our favor when it comes to building technology. But when it comes to building businesses, right? Marketing, business development, all this stuff requires relationship building, it requires subtlety, it requires a long game, and that's not Israel's strong suit. Excuse me.
Right.
So I think that while not letting people into our lane helps us when it comes to building tech, it actually harms us when it comes to building businesses.
Oh, interesting. That's fascinating. So do you, so most of Israeli successful businesses are B2B, are technology based, and people won't even be familiar with it. You mentioned some of those great technologies, and that often being acquired by giants, and we're using Israeli technology every day. But usually it's B2B because they're serving technology companies that we know, like you mentioned, Google, Apple, Microsoft, etc. Do you think Israel can build a B2C company? The reason, like a large B2C, I know we have some, of course. because I'm seeing it's overwhelmingly a lot of technology. Often that might come from the army, like I was saying earlier, but I'm not seeing a lot of B2C tech and B2C movement. Why do you think that is?
So I fundamentally disagree with your premise. I think that
Excellent.
was the case. It was the case once upon a time, and understandably so, because again, we're 9 million people. How do you build a consumer company on 9 million people? But if you look now, I actually wrote an article about this a couple of years ago, which is I think the title was 15 companies that are something like that prove that Israel can actually do
I
consumer
remember
tech.
reading that. I think you had like
Right.
JoyTunes on there and some
Yeah,
other things.
so there's now it's called Simply, but there's JoyTunes, there's Lightricks, there's Lemonade,
Right.
there's Fiverr. We have quite a few unbelievable consumer companies. So yeah, it's true that we're not yet building consumer companies like we're building B2B companies. That is true, but I do think there's some phenomenal B2C companies in Israel that are growing pretty quickly.
Why do you think the B2C why is this suddenly happening now? We still have a tiny population. Why is suddenly, do you think it's just breaking off of the B2C? Do you think people have, let's say, made connections internationally that have been able to make a B2C product that they'd be able to roll out now that, let's say, we didn't have those connections or networks? So let's say do a decade ago.
So Noam Bardin, who was the former CEO of Waze, famously said, I was in the room when he said it, he said, if I had not left my R&D in Israel when Google bought, because Facebook wanted to buy Waze, Google wanted to buy
Right.
Waze, and one of the things that really
Great story.
one of the reasons that Waze sold to Google and not to Facebook was because Facebook demanded that they leave Israel, that they open R&D in America. And so Noam said that if they had not kept their R&D in Israel, they would never have succeeded. But in the next sentence, he said, but had we not opened our sales and marketing in the US, we also would not have succeeded. And so, it's hard to build, sales and marketing, both from a cultural perspective, but also from a practical perspective. We're a tiny little country. And so now I think companies in Israel are understanding that they can build R&D here, build sales and marketing there. And that's kind of the best way to scale. And I think this is something that the ecosystem is starting to understand, and we're seeing it manifest in companies.
Do you think we'll see more marketing and sales here? I mean, so, I have a marketing agency here, and I'm seeing they're like more Olim immigrants that are coming here that are willing to work, let's say, American hours, or even French immigrants, selling to the French market, right? That living in Israel, that in a sense they can have, let's say, a good living, but of course they wouldn't be working those hours. Do you think that we'll see growth in marketing and sales in Israel, or do you think that's just kind of something when it comes to global specialization, it might be easier to keep the technology here, but the marketing and sales there? Or do you think we can actually make greater inroads?
I don't, there are, listen, Yoel, you and I are both marketers, so we know this. How many marketers, in your opinion, just a rough estimate, how many world-class marketers are there in Israel right now?
20 tops.
I think you're being nice.
I know, tops. I know. I'm being generous because I know a lot of marketers and they're listening to like, I know Yoel knows a lot more than 20 or 200 marketers, but yeah.
So I think, and I say this half jokingly, but it's actually the truth. And that is that, the difference between sales and marketing, fundamental difference, not the tactical difference or practical, but the actual fundamental difference is one word that comically does not exist in the Hebrew language. And that is subtlety, right? Subtlety. Mm-hmm. Marketing is subtle. Israelis are not subtle people. And there's a reason that the word subtlety doesn't exist in Hebrew, because we're not subtle people. So, I'm not sure that that's going to change. I'm not sure we're ever going to be able to build marketing infrastructure the way people are in other ecosystems around the world.
Mm-hmm. Lovely. Do you think what's the best way to learn marketing? Let's talk about that. So, if there's some Israelis listening, or a lot of people, let's say American, want to, let's say, thinking of making Aliyah, what are the best things for marketing? Like, what's the best way to learn if someone wants to actually become a world-class marketer? Do you think it's talent, or do you think like you're born with it, like a personality thing, or how much do you think it's nature versus nurture?
It's a really interesting question because, Kevin Rose, who's the founder of Dig, I don't know if you remember Dig, but they were Reddit's biggest competitor. He basically lost, right? Reddit won. And so when they asked Kevin Rose, like, what was your biggest mistake? What was the lesson that you learned? He said something profound. He said, I hired my team. He said, my biggest mistake was that I hired my team for skills and not for talent. Meaning, I hired a certain type of developer that could write a certain type of code. And when that code became obsolete, the person became obsolete. What I should have done is hire talented people, right? So I think, talent is something that you either have or you don't. Skills is something you can acquire. So I think, marketing, you can learn the skills. You can learn, how to use Twitter. You can learn how to pitch a journalist. But how to storytell, how to get people's heart pounding, not sure you could teach that.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I largely agree. I do think, though, however, it could be developed better. If someone is, let's say, has an idea for a startup, starting a startup, and they want to connect, let's say, with VCs, what would you say was the best way to do that?
Say the question again.
If you have a technology company, you have a startup, and you're trying to get funding, what would you recommend to startups?
That's obviously a very broad question, but first things first is figure out what your home run is. Like, why would an investor invest in you? Is it because you have an amazing product, you have amazing traction, you have an amazing team, you have amazing, what is it that?
Let's say you have an amazing person. Let's say the personality of the founder is very strong, and there's a very strong product, and we're able to demonstrate already some revenue and some interest. And now they want to scale, and they know that you really need to build a product, and let's say they're going to need some serious money. How would one to go about?
Right. So number one, research, a whole lot of research. And this is something that unfortunately many entrepreneurs like to skip over because it's not as sexy as the rest of the stuff you're going to do as an entrepreneur. But first of all, build a landscape of relevant investors. Who invests in your space? Who invests in your stage and is not?
Does this landscape already exist? Is there like a spreadsheet on this that exists or something?
Yeah. I mean, you have to build your own, when entrepreneurs say to me, oh, tell me who you know or send me relevant investors. I'm like, dude, if you are not resourceful enough to figure out who your investor should be, like, then the chances of you succeeding as an entrepreneur are basically none. So first and foremost, build a landscape, build yourself an Excel sheet of relevant investors. That's kind of number one. Then spend time starting, learning these investors, what gets them excited, what's their appetite, what's their strategy, et cetera, et cetera. And at the end of the day, and this is not an easy piece of advice, but you should bootstrap for as long as you can. Meaning, the later you go to an investor, the more attractive the terms, right? Because the later you go, the less risk the investor has to take. If you go early on and you have an idea on a napkin, then the investor's taking 100% of the risk, and they're going to take, tens of percentages of your company. Whereas if you come to an investor and you say, my product's ready, I have 100,000 daily users, we have $10 million of revenue. Okay, well, clearly people want your product. Clearly you're doing something right. Now the investor's more interested, and they need you more than you need them. And then you have the leverage, and then you define the terms. So
let's say you have that leverage. How do you make that connection? I mean, you just cold message them. You find a LinkedIn connection that's already connected, and you start messaging them. Hey, how close are you with this person?
So generally speaking, and this is a general rule of thumb, not only for investors, but anybody, there's really no justification in today's day and age to cold call or cold email anyone. You could always get to someone to introduce you. And specifically with investors, the more people, or I should say, the more an investor trusts a person who's introducing you, the higher the chances of this introduction being successful. So what I would do is I would look for founders that have had success and that investor trusts, and get them to introduce you.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Lovely. How do you know who's close with who as investors? People usually keep their connections close to their chest, right?
Nah, I mean, listen, again, with social media, it's pretty transparent, but even not social media,
That's
you
true,
you go to an investor's website, you see some of their portfolio companies, you go to LinkedIn, you see who do you know in those companies, reach out and be like, are you close with this investor? Yes, great. I'd love an introduction. Very simple.
Awesome. Very cool. That's simple. Very good. Technology and Israel. I've been thinking like a lot of the technology that comes out of Israel obviously comes out of the army. I would say probably the large majority comes through the innovation need in the army. Do you think, I've been thinking about like the future of where technology, when it comes to defense, national defense, is going to be, I think, more like big data processing, AI. And also, I think, is also going to be space and defense. You own space, owns the earth in a sense. Do you would you say that we should expect to see the future of Israeli technology, to see, we started with a lot with cybersecurity, see more AI, more data, big data processing. We're seeing a lot of data companies. And do you think we'll see more space and defense in the future, since that is a growing need when it comes to military?
I mean, we're already seeing that. I think, it's maybe a less sexy or less tech crunchy to write about a defense company, but I think, we're seeing tons of, just drones alone. I mean, how many drone companies are there in Israel, that provide products to the military? There are so many. So I don't think it's something that we're going to see. I think we already see it. And obviously every entrepreneur that me and you meet on a regular basis came from 8200, the military, intelligence unit. And so I think, military and defense is very deeply ingrained in the Israeli tech ecosystem and has been for a long time.
Right. Okay. When you talked about 8200, right? So people would, I get kind of equate like 8200, like the lead part of the NSA. Would that be fair?
I'm not sure I would make that. No, I don't. I mean,
What would you
listen, they're
say it's
both
an American counterpart for someone that would want to understand what the 8200 is? Is there
8200. I mean,
one?
it's an Yeah, I don't know if there is one, but it's an intelligence unit within the army. It's just there's infantry, there's paratroopers, and there's
Right. So my
intelligence. So that's
question
what it
is,
is.
my question is, how come out of the intelligence in the Israeli military, which is advanced, the intelligence, a lot of them end up going and creating businesses, but how come you have other countries that have very strong intelligence, the United Kingdom, the United States, Australia, how come they're not able to have that same, how come they don't leave their intelligence units and go ahead and start startups? Is it a cultural thing? Is it doesn't occur to them? Do they just think maybe there'll be entrepreneurs in a sense? Non-entrepreneurs. Why do you think that's uniquely here? If you have someone that has the same skill set and experience working for, doing that for their other home countries.
So I think it comes back to what we said before, which is that we're in survivor mode, and in the intelligence unit in the Israeli Defense Forces, they're not just learning theoretical, whatever. They're literally, I mean, every single horrible terror attack that we experience. How do you think they catch those terrorists? How do they have all this intel? It's all Israeli intelligence.
Yeah, but same in America. I mean, America too. America has her own intelligence for her own domestic terrorism, and and on their border and all their other things, and through the airlines, and they also have their own, and they also have these experts, and probably in far greater numbers. And I think that the tentacles of American intelligence goes much further and are in more places than Israel's. So I'd assume they have a lot more, and their population is much larger, and their interests are, they're global, they're superpower, global superpower, as opposed to we're more regional superpower. So wouldn't they have more people that would be able to leave and go ahead and create businesses, and they're still not doing it? Or do you just think is it just in the end of the day kind of a cultural like encouragement of entrepreneurship that's in Israel that would encourage people to do that and they don't have it there? Or do you think we're kind of at a point where if you leave 8200, if you have an idea, you already know, hey, if I have an idea and I can maybe easily get the connections to potentially find an investor. And in America, they may not necessarily have those resources when it comes to network and connections. It's just trying to understand what makes Israel unique here, that if they might have an American counterpart, they might even have better experience, understand, let's say cybersecurity and intelligence even better in the American military. How come they're not able to leave and do things, but we are?
Right. So that's literally the entire kind of question that the book Startup Nation comes to answer, which is how the heck did this country in this unstable region that's so small, how did it become this? And so the answer is there's a lot of different components here, right? There is definitely the culture that we talked about before, but there is actually very strong encouragement and even incentivization. Incentivization? That's not a word.
Yeah, you said right. Incentivization.
Is that a word?
Let's go with it. Roll.
It doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound right to me. But incentives from the Israeli government that like the Israeli Innovation Authority that gives out grants to startups, equity free. So there's the government involvement. There is the culture involvement. There is the military. There's just so many kind of different elements and components here that contribute to Israel being this kind of technology superpower. But I don't think it's kind of one thing or the other. I think it's a mixture of a lot of different things that just kind of propel Israel forward.
Let's talk about the demographics in Israel for a minute. Largely secular and often even Ashkenazi and mostly in Greater Tel Aviv is where a lot of the technology is. Why do you think there are so few, let's say, Mizrahim or Sephardic Jews, or Haredim and more religious Jews? Why are they so underrepresented in technology? And where do you see the trend?
Wow. That's a loaded question, my friend.
Yes, it was.
So first of all, the good news is that this is being worked on all the time. There are so many organizations in Israel to increase diversity in tech, whether it's women, whether it's Arabs, whether it's ultra-Orthodox, whatever it may be. Many, many people are hard at work at this for years already, and many of the organizations you and I both know very well. But having said that, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It is a problem. I don't think it's a problem that's specific to Israel. I think diversity in general is a problem. But listen, I don't think there's one right answer here. I think there's a lot of components. I think it's probably their upbringing. I think it's the educational system. I think there's definite discrimination. I'm not going to deny that. There's no question of discrimination. But again, I am optimistic that this is going to change in the coming years. And I know that many people are hard at work at this because it really is a very important top priority. By the way, not only for those underrepresented populations, but for the tech scene as a whole, because probably our biggest challenge is not enough talent. There's just not enough
Correct.
talent. And that talent that there is being swallowed up by Amazon and Google. And so startups have a really hard time finding top talent. And so if we increase, again, the ultra-Orthodox and more women and more Arabs and more, Mizrahi Jews, there's going to be more talent. Everyone will gain from that. So I am pretty hopeful and optimistic.
Love it. So let's say if you're a Haredi person and you want to get into tech, you have no connections. Let's say you didn't go to the army, but you're interested in technology. And let's say your English isn't perfect, isn't excellent. What do you is it possible to get into technology if you don't have excellent English?
I mean, well, I guess I'm not sure. I mean, on the one hand, I don't have Hebrew on my computer. Like I don't write ever in Hebrew. Like everything
Right.
happens in English. Like you'll find yourself like having, you know, an email thread or even a meeting with someone who's completely Israeli. You have perfect Hebrew, they have perfect Hebrew, you're talking in English. Like that's the thing, right? But, you know, having said that, I think, you know, if you're an engineer or you know, a product guy, I don't think you need English. If you're in biz dev and marketing, of course you need English. But you know, if you're a technical guy and you're writing code all day long, it doesn't really matter what language you speak. I think that's less relevant. But again, the answer to the question is it depends what your role is in a tech company.
Got it. So if someone's up and coming, they don't have the money, they don't have the network, they don't have the connections, they're, you know, how would an Israeli want to get into technology if they feel they don't know anyone really? You know, let's say they live in a more rural part of Israel.
I see. You know, I don't want to sound entitled. Okay, I recognize that, you know, I've built a career and I've done what I've done, but I don't buy that. Like everyone's accessible. I mean, like if you be a little intelligent, figure out how to use LinkedIn, figure out how to use Twitter, figure out how to use Facebook, you could get to anyone. I mean, literally.
So
anyone.
you just answered the question. The question is, the answer is that go online, go on social media, learn how to use LinkedIn, learn how to use Twitter, try to connect with the right people, find the jobs you're looking for, start messaging them, So that is the answer. You're saying use social media, start to connect and build a network.
Right, but people will say to that like, oh, but you know, I can't just get to anyone, and that's just simply false. Like again,
that's not true in Israel. That's an American thing. In Israel, that's not true at all.
I don't even agree with that. I don't think even in America, I think you get to any. Listen, yo, like with all due respect, I don't mean to be like whatever false, you know, fake humble here. With all due respect to what I've done in my career, I'm nobody. I'm some random dude living in Israel, and I was able to get to the founder of Apple, the man who invented the web browser, Alyssa Milano, Ellen DeGeneres follows me on Twitter. How the hell did I do that? Well, I was resourceful and I used social media. So I don't buy that you know, if you're resourceful and you're intelligent, you could get to anyone. And if I'm going to be a little bit harsh right now, if you can't figure that out, there's a good chance you don't belong in this tech world at all, because good luck building a startup without being resourceful. Like that is the name of the game. And so, you know, and another thing, I really genuinely do not believe, and I think HR professionals will disagree with what I'm about to say, but I fundamentally do not believe that there's any justification in 2022 to send in your resume through a website. Like, dude, get to the right person in the company. Get to them, have a cup of coffee with them, make an impression. That will lead to a job. Do not send in your resume to a pile of resumes that's 1.5 miles high, because you're never going to get noticed that way. Build relationships. That is,
it's not even that hard. I've done for some other people that they would apply for a job, let's see, on LinkedIn, and I would say, all right, send me the job description and the hiring manager, because you could actually see who that is. And then I'd message the hiring manager and I would say, you know, this person applied for this position. I can vouch for their knowledge on this, and this, and their character. And I strongly recommend to bring them in for an interview. And every time they'll at least bring them in for an interview. And so, yeah, it's absolutely, I agree. I mean, just sending in a CV from an email. I know you've helped a lot of people find employment.
People send me their resume. I put it in a folder. A company's looking to hire. I send them the resume. I've gotten over 500 people jobs that way. Like it's in this country specifically, but I think in general, in this country for sure, everything happens over cups of coffee. Everything. Like I'm talking like multi-million-dollar deals and investments are closed over cups of coffee. So that should be your goal. If you're looking for a job, find the right person and get a cup of coffee with them. Make an impression. Game over.
I see a lot of people that they have a goal of like, I'm going to do 1-minute interviews with people every day, 5 days a week for like 100 days. I'm going to get a cup of coffee. And it's just it's amazing what you're able to do. Also, when you force yourself to meet with people you may not know, having a lot of conversations with a lot of different people over a short period of time, the amount of knowledge that you're able to gain that you can then implement into the work that you're doing is tremendous. And what you can actually do for your network it's absolutely huge. If let's say you live abroad or in Israel or wherever, and you have some money and you're like, wow, Israel's, you know, tech is all the scene. I want to support Israel. I want to support technology. I want to get an ROI. How does one go buy and invest if they wanted to? They're not an accredited investor. Let's say they're not an accredited investor. Let's say they had $100,000 to throw around.
I mean, talk to me. Like, I'm seeing I mean, I'm just seeing endless deals here. And, to be clear, you know this, but I'll just kind of emphasize this for your listeners. I'm not a finder and I want nothing in return. But if you want to put $100,000 in an amazing company, talk to me and I will send you 20 decks and you can decide who you want to invest in. And I'll, of course, tell you my opinion on each company. But, there's so many deals right now, so many companies looking to raise capital. It's just a question of choosing the right one versus finding the right one. There's so many options.
Right. Would you say because of the economic situation, unless there's less cash to go around, that you're able to get more equity now for your investment than let's say you would have, let's say 9 months ago?
I guess that's one way of looking at it. In other words, companies are more desperate, so you can get. That's one way of looking at it. That's not. I wouldn't necessarily want to take money from an investor that thinks that way. It's kind of opportunistic.
No, I know. I'm just thinking economically here.
Yeah, economically, I guess that's a fair assessment that companies are having a harder time raising capital. So the terms are less in their favor, I guess. But I think a seasoned entrepreneur knows how to navigate that and raise capital again when they have the leverage versus when they need the money.
Right. All right. So let's shift gears. So let's talk about Israel advocacy and social media. So did you see? I love that the official State of Israel handle. Got replied to by Elon Musk. Actually, I posted that on LinkedIn. So I just get people to understand like the fun is on Twitter. And it's an amazing platform, and I'm actually really excited where Elon's going to take it. But putting that aside, let's say how can one actually do Israel advocacy and Zionism? They got a full-time job and just like kind of on the side because they're passionate and they care. What do you recommend for people that let's say want to be able to support Israel publicly? By publicly, of course, I mean online. Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, listen, you don't really need a lot of followers to go viral on Twitter. So, the famous tweet of the plane that landed on the Hudson, that famous picture that the entire world saw. People don't know this, but the person who took that picture was part of the rescue team who had about, less than 100 followers on Twitter. That picture got 90 million views, listen carefully, before CNN even knew there was a plane crash. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So everything breaks on Twitter.
Right. So
breaking
Twitter is great for content going viral. And so, I can tell you right now, literally today, I'm not exaggerating. I just posted it on Facebook. I tweeted this morning. Unfortunately, it was a horrible terrorist attack this morning in Jerusalem. I tweeted about it. And with all due respect to my 40,000 followers, this tweet that I tweeted less than 10 hours ago is about to hit 100,000 impressions, hundreds and hundreds of retweets. Like it's going crazy. And there's absolutely no correlation between my 40,000 followers and the amount of traction that my tweets get. Because, if you have one follower and that one follower is Oprah Winfrey, so it doesn't really matter how many followers you have. And I can tell you again, people that follow me, like Ellen, like Alyssa Milano, have millions and millions of followers. All it takes is one retweet from them. And the only way that these people are going to retweet you, not these people, but in general, is if you have good content. So if you want to do Israel advocacy, set yourself, a goal or let's say allocate an hour a day or even a half an hour a day where all you do is you spread truth on social media. Forget, followers, forget that hashtags, forget that. Share truth, share content and let Twitter do its thing.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So what keeps people motivated? They're like going to do this. Let's say they're going to spend, I'm going to spend 30 minutes a day posting on social media, or let's say Twitter in particular. And they're like, okay, they feel like they're getting no traction. After 30 days, they'll just say, well, this isn't a good use of my time. How does one prevent that? Or what would you recommend other than just like, hey, put out content there and eventually, hopefully, maybe if your content's good, if it's relevant, if it's honest, if it's insightful, if there's clarity, right? Mental clarity, moral clarity, then it might be able to get some traction and you might be able to change people's minds in a sense, right? Or expand their perspectives when it comes to Israel. But most people, they would do that with their very little following. You're talking about an exception, right? That guy that had a few hundred followers, they got 90 million views of the picture of the plane that landed on the Hudson. These are exceptions. These aren't the rules, right? With, there's like 260 million active users on Twitter. We're talking about exceptions that, that are under 100 people. So for the vast majority of people like myself and those that are listening now, if they wanted to, at the end of the day, some people feel like they're yelling in the wind.
So a couple of things. Number one, I think that you have to make a shift in your mindset. In other words, and this is true, by the way, in general, for marketing, for content, for social, for everything. If all you're doing you're doing with the clear and direct goal of gaining traffic, then you're not going to succeed.
Yeah, you're gonna fail. I tell that people about YouTube, especially because they're like, "Oh, your YouTube video only had 64 views." I'm like, those are very relevant views, and this is long form content, and those are real people, and that's awesome.
Right.
You know, they don't understand like 64 relevant video views is great. Yeah, your audio just went out. All right, so Hillel's gone, but he'll be back. Yeah,
what?
We hear you now. We're back on.
Hold on a second. That was the weirdest. Yeah, my. Oh my God! 1 second. Hold on.
We hear you, just so you know. Anyway, that was fascinating. We'll definitely edit this part out.
Yo, do you hear me?
Yes, I do. Do you hear me? I don't see you though.
I know. What the hell is going on here? This is so freaking weird. Hang on a second. I never.
Take your time. We'll edit this part out. Take as long as you need, man. There you are. I see you.
You hear me now?
Yep.
That was the weirdest thing. All of a sudden, it said my mic disconnected, and then my camera disconnected. That was the weirdest thing ever. Okay. Anyway,
okay. So we were saying, I was saying that, okay, but most people, let's say, right, we're saying that it actually matters actually the quality of the views. So people say, oh, I'm not getting traction. If you're actually just posting for the only reason is just for people to be able to get in. So with your intention of, let's say, going viral or getting as many people to see things as possible, instead of, let's say, just saying, putting out truth out there, then you're going to end up getting frustrated because you're not going to reach your goals. However, right. It's kind of like it's kind of like follow the process, not this, follow the system, not right systems, not goals, so to speak. And so if your system is putting out truth, eventually you'll break through. But if your goal is to go viral, you just get frustrated. Because I was saying that if we get, if you put out a video and it gets 67 views, those are 67 real people. And if I know they're relevant and they're subscribers, that's fantastic. That was long form content of video, of conversation that they heard that's actually going to change what they think. And they're going to go ahead and work that into their conversations, maybe to their own social media. And so you'll actually be able to spread a lot of good. And I think that's actually a great way to do it. But most people seem like they're avoiding that altogether. When it comes to social media, why do you think people are so scared to speak up? Do you think, like you were saying before you got on, right? Your post this morning that went viral from the terrorist attack, all the anti-Semitism that's on there, right? As an example. That in of itself, do you think that prevents people from actually doing any kind of Israel advocacy? Not prevent people to get like demoralized.
It's an interesting question. So I actually had a conversation with Arsen Ostrovsky the other day, who is probably the top Israel, advocacy expert on Twitter. And I said to him, I'm like, dude, I have so much respect for you because, like, how do you not get tired? Like, all the trolls, and so not everyone's cut out for this. And I got to be honest with you, I'm not cut out for it. A lot of times I take this stuff really personally. I get some really sick stuff on Twitter. So I use the block and report button a lot. But it definitely is demoralizing. It definitely is not easy. But at the end of the day, here's the kicker. If you use social media, by the way, this applies to business and to advocacy. If you use social media as a broadcast platform to just like post things and leave, then you're not going to have success. But if you're doing this right, when it comes to Israel advocacy, you're sharing things, but you're also engaging with, the people out there. But, and this is so crucial, you have to know who you're engaging with. No point in engaging with someone who's just a blatant Nazi or like a blatant Jew hater. Like, you're not going to convince them. Don't even waste your time. And you don't need to convince the people that are already on your side, because then you're preaching to the choir. They're the people in the middle that are on the fence. Those are the people that are listening.
I would say they're on the fence. They're largely ignorant, and they'll just believe whatever they read as face value.
Right. I'm saying, but you can educate them. You can give them actual facts, because I don't know of a single conflict in the history of the world where there was so much historical fabrications and lies. But I'm not talking about opinions here. Okay, we can have opinions on the conflict. if you're going to tell me that an Arab-Palestinian state ever existed in the history of the world, you're just blatantly lying. That never existed. And if you think it existed, kindly tell me when it was established and who the prime minister was, what the currency was, what the national anthem was. It did not exist. So the fact that people are saying Israel occupied an Arab-Palestinian land is just a blatant lie. And so, you know, you can try to convince these people that believe in lies or Israel's an apartheid state. You know, the Muslim citizens of this country have more free rights in Israel than they have in any other country, any other Muslim country in this entire region. So if you're going to call Israel an apartheid state, you're not listening. And I'm not going to convince you otherwise. But there are people who hear this apartheid crap, and if you show them the actual facts, presumably, hopefully, they will listen. Those are the people you need to target.
Do you think facts work better than emotional? I feel like emotional appeal works better than facts, particularly when it comes to, let's say, the as you call it, people in the middle of the fence, the ignorant.
It's an interesting question because I think it should be a combination of both.
Because
Right?
I think that's why Israel doesn't do so well. It's because we try to use facts and logic, and that's not, you know, this. Humans don't respond to that. Humans respond to emotions, right? Facebook said the most engaged posts are ones that get people angry. Ironically, right? Like it's, and that goes for all social media, but they were looking at like what responses had the hardest engagement with it. Maybe facts. I'm not saying we should avoid facts a lot. We don't have to. Facts are on our side. Jews are the indigenous people of the land of Israel for thousands of years. But like, do you think more of emotional appeal? Like, kind of, shouldn't we spit it back in a sense, like judo it and been like, actually, we've been here for thousands of years. Here's proof. You're actually, you know, you're trying to steal my land. I'm indigenous. You know what I mean? Like, as opposed to, oh, here are the facts. You know, according to international law, Israel, you know, like, you know, great international laws on our side too, but it does. People don't care because there isn't that emotional appeal. There isn't a sense of like justice, right? People are looking for, I want to stand on the right side of history. I want to stand with justice, and people don't really care for facts and logic. I think that has to be like 5% of the population.
Right. So I think it's probably a combination of both. In other words, you can't just go with emotion and not, you know, talk about facts, because facts are facts and they're important. Having said that, there's a way to communicate facts, and that's with emotion. So it has to be a combination of both, I think.
Got it. Awesome. Hillel Fuld, if you were to leave people with kind of like a couple tips on, let's say, specifically if someone wanted to better understand technology in Israel and what's going on and how things are exploding here, with the exception of following you, which I'll ask how we can, what do you think is the best way for people to kind of stay in touch and get to know what's going on actually on the ground, and not necessarily just, you know, random headlines of this company raises this amount of money?
Right. So I think, you know, there are quite a few leading publications that cover Israeli tech. Obviously, there's Kalkalis, there's Forbes Israel, there's the Marker Israel, there's Globes, Jerusalem Post, you know, the Times of Israel, No Camels, Israel 21C. There's quite a few. But then again, you could also read, you know, the global press like TechCrunch and literally just search Israel and see, you know, what's happening. But I think the answer to the question really is following the right people on social media at the end of the day.
Awesome. So on that note, how can people follow you so they can stay in touch and continue to learn?
Yeah, I'm, my handle across the web is Hillel Fuld, as in HILZ, like zebra, and my last name FULD. And anybody who's ever written me on any platform can attest that I respond in a I would say supernaturally fast way.
It's actually a little troubling. I'm like, are you like when I WhatsApp you, it was like
I'm obsessed with responsiveness. And so yeah, anybody can reach out, and if I can help with anything to anyone in any way, hit me up. I'm happy to help.
Awesome. And we'll leave obviously your social media information in the description below. Hillel, thank you for joining Israel Unfiltered. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me, my friend. It's good to see you. This doesn't count that we still need to meet offline and have a cigar and a whiskey or something, but it's good to see you online.
Yeah, it's been several months. We'll do it soon. Take care, brother.
All right. Take care.